It felt like, we were talking about in the break that they have launched this, but there's going to be some growing pains.
Absolutely. India is an economy with over 1 billion people, so a big reform like a GST is going to take a while for it to be implemented successfully. We expect the rollout to sort of have some teething issues in the first few months, but over the long term, it should be good for growth. But we probably won't see the long-term benefits, at least until next year.
I mean, even saying as soon as next year, that's surprisingly short term if you look at the implications. But what kind of benefits do you see? Is it going to have a material impact when it comes to price pressures?
Not in terms of price pressures. Usually, the way sort of the GST works in other economies is you see a one-off increase in inflation, but we don't expect that to see in India, largely because the GST is designed to be sort of neutral in terms of inflation and prices. So while prices of some goods might increase in the short term, prices of other goods might come down because the GST is removing some of the double taxes and levies that are currently applied across India. So we do expect, and over the long term, to see some benefits as business processes are improved, and in terms of sort of global sentiment towards India, that's also improving.
I just want to talk about, I guess, what it means in terms of the ease of doing business, because India is actually quite one of the worst ranked when it comes to the ease of doing business. And I know part of Modi's focus has been to attract investment and potentially to get more foreign interest as well. Is the GST streamlining this eventually going to be able to add towards that goal?
I think so. Over the long term, we probably won't see a sort of an improvement in the business environment over the next year or so. But after 2018, 2019, we should see sort of businesses becoming a bit more accustomed to the way the GST is being rolled out. So that should remove some of the double taxes across various states, and it should streamline some of the process which are currently applied. So overall, we should see India's business environment and sort of the rank improve over the coming sort of long term.
For us, you used the word should on 2 occasions in that answer, and that's just it. It should do all those things. But, satirists would say that China's national pastime is tax evasion. Now, does this solve that issue?
It's probably not so. It's difficult to say at the moment, largely because some of the small businesses will have difficulties in sort of applying the GST. So there's a grace period of 2 months that the government's given the small businesses. In that, I think they'll need to sort of get up to date with the IT infrastructure that the GST is applying. So over the long term, I think overall sort of it should improve revenue, assuming that businesses comply with the new standards.
I meant India, of course, and you referred to the answer as India as well. Thank you for that. How hard has it been to implement this whole GST? And on top of that, are they ready, in your view?
Look, it's been sort of the GST has been sort of policymakers have been looking at it for the last 10 years, so it's not something that's just happened overnight. There's obviously been sort of back and forth with some of the states and the way the revenues are, and some of the arguments between the states about how much revenue they should be taking on. So I think it's been sort of like a long driven process, and I think now is probably the right time to implement it. Otherwise, it could probably take a bit longer than probably assumed.
For us, what about the ratings arm of Moody's? They'll be looking at your analytics in due course, and how closely will they look for the success of GST in terms of how they rate India in the future and their outlook for the country?
Unfortunately, I'm not a ratings analyst, so I can't answer that question. However, from an economic perspective, we do expect sort of growth to rebound next year to 7.8%, and that's up from 6.8% that we're forecasting this year. So overall, we do expect the Indian economy to improve over the coming years.
More reforms. I mean, Narendra Modi came and it was this enormous platform of goodwill and high expectations. Do you think he's delivered? What should be next?
I think one of the main things that investors are looking for is some of the changes in labour law and land laws. It's notoriously difficult in India to sort of get approvals and for infrastructure purposes. And if those sort of reforms are delivered over the next few years, then I think we'll see another sort of increase in investor sentiment towards India. So far, I think the GST's it's been viewed quite positively by the market. We've seen the Indian equities increase over the past few months. So I think that overall the reform agenda is sort of gaining traction.